The anime opens with a mundane scene of modern-day Japan, where an ordinary office worker returns home after an exhausting day, looking forward to a simple midnight meal of miso-fried pork ribs. He sets his rice cooker to quick-cook mode and begins preparing his dinner with practiced efficiency. 24 minutes until the rice is ready, but as he turns to retrieve his pork ribs, something feels wrong. The familiar surroundings of his apartment dissolve into confusion. Suddenly, the man finds himself in a completely different world. He's no longer in his kitchen but surrounded by strangers speaking Japanese in what appears to be a medieval European setting. An elderly man announces his retirement now that his successor has finally wed, while others discuss matters of nobility and marriage. The confusion intensifies as the former office worker struggles to comprehend his situation. This can't be real, it must be a dream. He just wants to return to his pork ribs. But when someone addresses him directly and demands he greet the assembled guests, the truth becomes unavoidable. This is no dream. The young boy, for that is what he has become, stands frozen before the crowd until his brother Erich comes to his rescue. Erich explains that today marks their eldest brother Kurt's wedding to Amalie, the second daughter of a noble family. The former office worker, now inhabiting the body of 5-year-old Wendelin von Benno Baumeister, tries to process this impossible reality. When he asks if their family might be nobles, Erich confirms they are genuine nobility, though he seems puzzled by such an obvious question. Hope sparks within Wendelin as he surveys the lavish wedding celebration. The ceremony appears extravagant, with elegantly dressed guests and what seems like an abundance of food. If his new family can throw such a glittering party, surely they must rank highly among the nobility. As the third son of a noble house, his future should be comfortable and secure. The wedding feast tastes incredible, and Wendelin allows himself to believe that his reincarnation might actually be a stroke of fortune. Reality crashes down the very next morning. Wendelin sits before a meal of dry brown bread and watery soup, the stark contrast to the previous night's feast leaving him bewildered. His brother Erich explains the harsh truth. The lavish wedding was merely a display of noble pride, a show they couldn't afford to skimp on despite their actual poverty. Starting today, they return to their normal meals of brown bread and thin soup. The Baumeister family, despite their noble status, lives in crushing poverty. The situation grows exponentially worse as Wendelin learns more about his new family. Brothers return from unsuccessful hunts, discussing their inability to catch game. Each conversation reveals another sibling Wendelin didn't know existed. Brother Helmut, Brother Paul, Brother Hermann, and these are only his full brothers. He has half-brothers as well, Walter and Karl, who didn't even attend the wedding. The devastating realization hits him like a physical blow. He isn't the third son of a noble family, he's the eighth son. Wendelin's despair deepens as he studies a map and learns the full extent of his predicament. The kingdom of Helmut stretches across vast territories, with the capital city of Stuttgart housing 1 million people. South lies the dukedom of Bleichrieder and its major trade center. But beyond the Rigdi mountain range and the furthest reaches of the back country sits the Baumeister knightdom, a territory so remote and insignificant that its entire population numbers only 800 people. Wendelin has been reincarnated as the eighth son of impoverished nobles living in the middle of nowhere. His dreams of a comfortable noble life shatter completely. The true cruelty of his situation becomes apparent when his older brothers prepare to leave home. They explain that poor nobles cannot afford to divide their meager lands among multiple heirs. Everything will go to Kurt as the eldest son. Hermann as the second son married into a branch family as insurance, but the remaining brothers must forfeit their succession rights for a small monetary settlement and seek their fortunes elsewhere. The moment they leave, they cease to be nobles entirely. They'll travel to the capital to take exams for soldier or administrative positions or perhaps become adventurers. Their futures depend entirely on their own skills and efforts. The brothers warn young Wendelin not to waste his childhood as he'll face the same fate when he comes of age. Desperate for any advantage in this harsh new reality, Wendelin explores his father's library, hoping to find useful knowledge. Instead, he discovers nothing but romance novels and tourism guides. Then, buried among the useless books, he finds something curious, an instruction manual for a magical aptitude crystal ball. The manual claims that while everyone possesses some mana, only 1 in 1,000 people has enough to actually cast magic spells. Those with talent can shine in many fields. Wendelin remains skeptical, expecting disappointment, but decides to test himself anyway. When Wendelin touches the crystal ball, it erupts in rainbow light, the sign of exceptional magical aptitude. His excitement surges only to crash again when he realizes the manual offers no further guidance on actually learning magic. He tears through the library searching for spellbooks or magical guides, finding only more romance novels and tourist guides. His father, who cannot even read, confirms they have no other books. Instead of pursuing this potential lifeline, Wendelin is sent to the forest to gather firewood, his magical talent seemingly worthless without instruction. In the forest, Wendelin attempts to activate magic through sheer willpower, shouting random incantations about fire, lightning, and healing. Nothing happens. He has no idea how to access the power the crystal ball detected. His frustration mounts until a mysterious voice calls out to him. An elderly man appears, apologizing for startling the boy and introducing himself as a magician. Before Wendelin can fully process this encounter, danger strikes. Some creature spots them in the forest. The elderly magician, Alfred Rainford, remains calm despite the threat. He instructs Wendelin to picture his own wind magic, to accept the mana within his body and make it circulate. Though Wendelin protests that he doesn't understand, instinct takes over in the moment of crisis. The mana flows through him and wind magic manifests for the first time. Alfred congratulates the boy on casting his first spell, then reveals his identity as a former court magician of the Dukedom of Bleichroeder. He looks at young Wendelin with keen interest and makes a profound declaration. This child will one day become a magician far greater than himself. Tasting what he assumes is post-meal water, only to discover it's actually mate, a bitter herbal drink served in Alfred's simple forest dwelling. The stark contrast between this and the comforts of modern Japan continues to remind him of his new reality. Alfred then makes an unexpected proposal that will change Wendelin's life forever. He offers to teach the young boy magic. Wendelin's shock gives way to eager enthusiasm when he realizes Alfred wants no payment, only a disciple to pass his knowledge to. The elderly magician warns that this training must remain absolutely secret. If anyone discovers Wendelin possesses magical ability, ambitious retainers and subjects might support him as the next lord instead of his eldest brother Kurt, triggering a dangerous succession dispute. Despite being the eighth son with seemingly no claim to leadership, Alfred explains that magicians hold far more power than most people realize, and Wendelin could become the rightful heir in an instant if his abilities became known. For a child's safety, secrecy is essential. Training begins the following day with a technique called capacity matching, where a student synchronizes their mana circulation with their masters to expand their magical reserves. Alfred takes Wendelin's hands, instructing him to picture mana flowing between their bodies in a continuous circuit. The process feels cold at first, but then Wendelin senses something extraordinary, the vast reservoir of Alfred's mana flowing into him. The result astounds Alfred himself. A person's maximum mana capacity is determined at birth and cannot be increased through normal means, yet Wendelin not only matches Alfred's substantial capacity but surpasses it. They don't even reach Wendelin's true maximum, revealing the boy possesses magical potential far beyond what Alfred initially imagined. The master realizes he has found someone truly exceptional. Meanwhile, back at the Baumeister household, Wendelin's father Arter searches frantically for the magical aptitude crystal ball that once sat in his study. He suspects young Wendelin took it, probably hoping to discover some hidden talent that might improve his prospects as an eighth son. Kurt dismisses this with cruel mockery, suggesting his youngest brother probably despaired at his own mediocrity and cried in disappointment. Neither father nor eldest son can imagine that Wendelin actually possesses extraordinary magical talent, let alone that he's already begun training. The training progresses with remarkable speed. Within just days, Wendelin masters advanced magical techniques that would take ordinary students months or years to learn. Alfred marvels at his students' rapid progress, attributing it to having proper instruction rather than fumbling through self-teaching. To maintain the cover story of foraging for food, Alfred provides Wendelin with baskets of mountain vegetables to bring home. The disguise works perfectly. Wendelin's mother and sister-in-law praise his apparent knack for finding ingredients, happily using them for that evening's soup. However, complications arise when Arter notices Wendelin has gathered vegetables that only grow on the far side of the river where no bridge exists for crossing. The suspicious father briefly wonders if his 5-year-old son somehow used magic to fly across, but immediately dismisses the absurd notion. Kurt overhears this exchange, and though he too rejects the possibility, a seed of doubt plants itself in his mind. As training continues, Alfred introduces tracking magic, an advanced application of wind magic that allows the user to sense vibrations in the air currents surrounding them. Wendelin quickly masters this technique and uses it to hunt a horo-horo bird, the same elusive game that his older brothers struggled to catch. The grilled bird tastes delicious, especially when paired with wild wasabi Wendelin discovered deep in the forest. Alfred enthusiastically tries the wasabi for the first time, praising its sharp, clean flavor. However, his expression grows serious when he learns where Wendelin found it. The deeper parts of the forest are known as the Enchanted Forest, home to dangerous monsters that ordinary humans cannot hope to defeat. Wendelin realizes he nearly lost his life gathering condiments, though Alfred admits that such dangerous areas also contain valuable foodstuffs and rare herbs unavailable anywhere else. During their training sessions, the conversation turns to Wendelin's future. Alfred asks whether the boy wants to become Lord of the Baumeister domain, given his magical abilities would make such a path possible. Wendelin considers the option but ultimately decides it sounds troublesome, especially given the inevitable conflict with his brother Kurt. When he admits he has no other particular ambitions either, Alfred suggests a different path, becoming an adventurer. The master believes Wendelin's adaptability and magical talent make him ideally suited for the adventurer's life, and Alfred speaks from experience, having been an adventurer himself before serving as court magician. The idea of exploring the wide world appeals to Wendelin far more than the political maneuvering required to claim lordship over a poor backwater domain. Wendelin announces his intention to his family, declaring that he wishes to enroll in the Adventurers Academy once he turns 12. His parents and brothers listen with varying reactions, but his father delivers crushing news: the Baumeister family lacks the funds to pay for such education. The academy lies beyond the mountain range, far from their impoverished domain, and tuition costs more than they can afford. Wendelin's dream seems to die before it can begin, blocked not by lack of ability but by simple poverty. Alfred continues training his disciple in increasingly advanced techniques, including flight magic. The exhilarating freedom of soaring through the air gives Wendelin his first true taste of the wide world that awaits beyond his family's small territory. However, after only 2 weeks of intensive training, Alfred abruptly announces that their time together ends tomorrow. Wendelin protests that he's only just begun learning flight magic and cannot control it reliably yet. Alfred insists the basics are sufficient and that daily practice will naturally improve stability and control. The sudden conclusion confuses Wendelin. 2 weeks seems far too brief for proper magical education. The truth emerges when disturbing rumors reach the Baumeister household. Villagers report sightings of a whispering dead in the forest, an undead creature that retains its cognitive abilities and can even hold conversations. Unlike mindless zombies, whispering dead appear almost human, distinguished only by their cold bodies, non-functioning senses, and unnaturally pale skin. The news sends fear through the household, though no one connects these sightings to the mysterious hermit teaching Wendelin magic. Alfred reveals the terrible truth to his student. 15 years ago, he served as court magician to the former Duke Bleichrieder during the disastrous expedition into the Enchanted Forest. Despite commanding an army of 2,000 soldiers, they were overwhelmed by endless waves of monsters. Alfred fought desperately to protect the Duke and troops while his mana reserves dwindled. Eventually, exhausted and overwhelmed, he fell in battle alongside everyone else. His deep regret at failing his duty and dying without passing on 30 years of accumulated magical knowledge transformed him into a whispering dead, a cursed existence sustained by unfulfilled wishes. When such a creature's wish is finally granted, they can pass on to proper rest. Alfred explains that when he sensed Wendelin's enormous magical potential, joy filled his undead heart for the first time in 15 years. He had finally found someone worthy of inheriting his knowledge. But Wendelin was only 5 years old, and Alfred feared the child would flee in terror if he knew the truth about his teacher's nature. So the whispering dead lied, pretending to be a living hermit, buying time to pass on everything he could in whatever brief period remained. The 2 weeks of training represent Alfred's entire posthumous purpose. He crammed a lifetime of magical knowledge into a desperate crash course, knowing his time grows short. Alfred asks his dear disciple to ease his fears and let him finally rest. Wendelin, tears streaming down his face, thanks his master for everything and promises to honor the knowledge he's received. He casts purification magic and warm holy light envelops Alfred's undead form. The former court magician expresses gratitude for the pleasant warmth washing over him, a sensation his cold, dead body hasn't felt in 15 years. His final words acknowledge that Wendelin truly was the magician he'd been searching for all along. The light grows brighter, and Alfred's form dissolves peacefully, his regrets finally laid to rest. Wendelin stands alone in the forest clearing where his master vanished, now carrying the complete magical legacy of one of the kingdom's greatest magicians, along with the heavy responsibility of using that power wisely. 7 years pass in isolation. After Alfred's death, Wendelin spends his time alone, deliberately keeping his distance from his family and the people of his domain to prevent any succession disputes that might arise if his magical abilities became known. The solitary years take their toll. By the time he turns 12 and finally leaves for the Adventurers Academy, his communication skills have deteriorated severely. He stands at the threshold of a new chapter, determined to make friends and start his story properly. But the weight of 7 years without meaningful human connection makes even simple social interactions feel overwhelming. The scholarship class at the Adventurers Academy begins with introductions. Students present themselves one by one, revealing their backgrounds and talents. Louise Jolland Orlia Overweg introduces herself as the third daughter of the Overweg family, renowned instructors of the magic fist style in the dukedom of Bleichroeder. Ina Suzanne Hillenbrand follows, explaining she's the third daughter of the Hillenbrand family, famous for their spearmanship instruction, and that her exceptional talent earned her a place in the scholarship program. When Wendelin's turn arrives, he nervously announces himself as the eighth son of the Baumeister knightdom and suggests people call him well as a nickname. The moment the words leave his mouth, he wonders if suggesting a nickname was too forward. Too presumptuous for someone with his complete lack of social experience. The instructor Seckert explains the curriculum, focusing particularly on an upcoming requirement that sends anxiety coursing through Wendelin. Students must form parties for practical training beginning next month. They're expected to self-organize into groups, a task that feels impossibly daunting to someone who already feels ostracized and alone. The other students immediately begin strategizing, their eyes turning toward Wendelin with calculating interest. Word has spread that he's the year's only scholarship student specializing in magic, a rare talent in itself, but rumors claim his magical power already rivals top-class professional adventurers. The magic instructor reportedly gave up trying to teach him, having nothing left to offer. Students recognize that partnering with such a prodigy could secure their futures, as academy parties typically remain together even after graduation. 3 students in particular devise a plan. Erwin von Arnim, the fifth son of the Arnim knightdom and top swordsman of their year, proposes an alliance to Louise and Ina, who rank as the best martial artist and spearwoman respectively. Erwin believes Wendelin is deliberately staying aloof to appraise potential partners, waiting to see who proves worthy of joining a great mage. By forming a trio of the Academy's top fighters in their respective disciplines, they might attract Wendelin's attention and earn his recognition. Louise finds the logic sound and agrees immediately, while Ina expresses skepticism but goes along with her childhood friend's decision. Wendelin, meanwhile, remains completely oblivious to these machinations. He struggles simply to approach his classmates, working up courage to offer them Sancho pepper he foraged as a conversation starter. When he finally attempts to approach a group, he finds them laughing and having fun together, and his confidence evaporates. He convinces himself they're too busy and shouldn't be bothered. The pattern repeats throughout the early days. Wendelin wants desperately to connect with others but cannot overcome the barrier of his own anxiety and inexperience. The situation grows more complicated when Seckert announces that scholarship students without family stipends will need part-time work to support themselves. He recommends hunting, but warns against going alone due to the dangers involved. Wendelin realizes with sinking dread that he needs to hunt but has no group to join. Every potential party has already formed around other students. Once again, he finds himself alone through a combination of others' assumptions about his aloofness and his own inability to reach out. Desperate for money, and without a party for group hunting, Wendelin ventures into the wilderness alone. His magical abilities allow him to defeat monsters and collect bounties that provide much-needed income. The staff at the collection center express gratitude for his valuable contributions, encouraging him to return often. With money in hand, Wendelin spots his 3 classmates, Erwin, Louise, and Ina, and sees an opportunity to finally break through his social isolation. He approaches with the intention of inviting them to eat together, excited at the prospect of sharing a meal and conversation with potential friends. Before he can extend the invitation, disaster strikes. The trio has ventured into dangerous hunting grounds, pursuing extra-large wolves in hopes of earning significant bounties to impress Wendelin. Their confidence exceeds their ability, and they find themselves surrounded and overwhelmed. Erwin curses their situation as wolves close in from all sides. Louise apologizes to Ina for not listening to her earlier warnings about the danger. A wolf lunges at Louise from above, and Erwin desperately tries to intercept but cannot reach her in time. The 3 brace for the worst. Wendelin's magic saves them. Powerful spells obliterate the wolves surrounding his classmates, turning certain death into sudden salvation. The 3 stare in shock at their rescuer, then immediately apologize for the trouble they've caused. Wendelin brushes off their apologies, simply nodding their classmates after all. But the rescue triggers an emotional breakdown from the trio. Erwin confesses they were trying to get Wendelin to recognize them as worthy partners, only to create problems for him instead. Louise admits that seeing his overwhelming magical power makes her realize they exist in completely different worlds. She gives up on forming a party with him. Ina agrees, declaring they don't deserve to be in his party. Erwin reveals the shameful truth that all 3 were planning to use Wendelin as a tool to improve their own lives. Wendelin's response stuns them. He admits the situation goes both ways. He essentially dragged them along to meet Brantag because he didn't want to go alone with an intimidating older man of such high standing. The three react with confusion, and Ina asks if his earlier words about forming a party were genuine. Wendelin hastily clarifies that yes, he truly does want to be in a party with the three of them. The misunderstanding clears in that moment. Neither side was using the other. They were all just lonely, anxious students trying to navigate the social complexities of academy life while dealing with their own insecurities. The realization. Summer break arrives at the Adventurers Academy, and Wendelin receives an invitation to attend his brother Erich's wedding. Erich suggested bringing friends if he had any, so Wendelin invites his newly formed party, Erwin, Louise, and Ina, to accompany him. Louise arrives dressed in an elaborate, showy gown, believing that appearing at a noble wedding will help her secure employment as a retainer to some aristocratic family. The wedding involves the Brandt family, another knightdom, so several nobles should be in attendance. The group prepares to travel to the ceremony via magic airship, though Erwin expresses deep skepticism about a ship that flies through the sky. Brantag joins them not as a guest but because he's traveling to the capital to report on his domain's status, and the airship route conveniently takes him there. During the flight, Wendelin studies a guidebook for the capital, hoping to finally acquire something he's long desired. The peaceful journey shatters when panicked passengers notice something massive approaching the airship. An undead ancient dragon, a creature from a bygone era, now corrupted and reanimated, attacks the vessel. Passengers demand answers from the crew, who explain that while the flight path normally avoids monster territories, undead ancient dragons don't follow such predictable patterns. Terror spreads through the cabin as passengers realize the danger. The vice captain attempts to reassure everyone by announcing that the powerful mage Brantag Ringstadt will handle the threat. Brantag immediately deflates that hope. He bluntly states he cannot defeat an undead ancient dragon. Undead creatures can only be destroyed through purification with holy magic, a discipline Brantag hasn't mastered. Just as despair sets in, Brantag reveals the ship carries another mage, Wendelin. The young man protests desperately, insisting he's not capable of handling such a monster, but Brantag cuts through his panic with a simple statement about what Alfred would have done. Wendelin's master would have taken care of this threat with a smile. Brantag outlines the plan. He'll protect the ship while Wendelin leaps off, takes flight, and purges the dragon with holy magic. As a parting instruction, Brantag reminds Wendelin to use his magic bag to collect the dragon's bones after defeating it. The battle commences with Wendelin launching himself from the airship and confronting the massive undead dragon in midair. His three friends cheer him on from the ship's deck despite the danger, while Brantag works to keep them from getting themselves killed in their enthusiasm. Wendelin channels holy magic, pouring more and more power into brilliant purifying light until the ancient dragon's corrupted form finally disintegrates. Bones rain down from the sky as the threat dissolves. In the aftermath, Brantag urgently reminds Wendelin about collecting the bones, warning that the king's personal guards will arrive soon to claim the dragon's remains. Wendelin hurriedly gathers the valuable materials into his magic bag before the authorities arrive, though he doesn't fully understand why such extreme measures are necessary. Brantag simply notes that a man's honor is everything. The aftermath of the dragon slaying brings Wendelin before the king himself. An official ceremony takes place in the royal palace, where Wendelin and Aruterio, standing in for Brantag, are formally recognized for their deeds. The king addresses young Wendelin directly, acknowledging his achievement in slaying an ancient dragon and protecting the lives of passengers aboard the magic airship. For these accomplishments, the king grants Wendelin the 6th rank of baronet, a title of nobility. Aruterio prompts Wendelin to recite the proper pledge, and the dazed young man declares his sword shall serve the king, the kingdom, and the people. The ceremony concludes quickly, and only afterward does the reality sink in. Wendelin has just become a baronet without fully comprehending what was happening. Following the ceremony, high-ranking officials immediately summon Wendelin to discuss two crucial matters: the specifics of his new peerage and the division of the dragon's body parts. Lord Commissioner Ruckner and Lord Marshal Edgar engage in a heated negotiation right in front of the bewildered young man. Ruckner advocates for a payment of 130,000 coins, emphasizing budget constraints and suggesting Wendelin, as a citizen of the kingdom, should understand the financial realities. Edgar counters that stinginess towards someone who risked his life in battle would be shameful. He points out that the ancient dragon's bones and the magic crystals that could be created from its enormous magic stone would allow several currently non-operational magic airships to fly again. Such strategic value deserves proper compensation. The two officials argue back and forth as if Wendelin isn't even present, their voices rising in intensity. Aruterio apologizes for not covering Wendelin's ears to spare him the uncomfortable display. The complications of nobility multiply rapidly. Aruterio explains that Wendelin has become a noble with a promising future, having earned the Twin Dragon Medal, an honor no one has received in over 2 centuries. This achievement makes him an attractive prospect for employment seekers and ambitious families. Almost immediately, a man named Rodrich bursts forward, loudly proclaiming his confidence with the spear and begging for employment as a retainer. Guards drag the overeager applicant away before he can finish his pitch. Aruterio warns that Wendelin will be swarmed by similar hopefuls, along with wealthy merchants desperate to marry their daughters to a rising noble. The situation becomes so overwhelming that Wendelin won't be able to safely set foot outside his accommodations for the foreseeable future. When Wendelin asks about basic necessities like shopping, Aruterio confirms that even simple errands will prove difficult. This is the price of fame that comes with being a proper noble. The burden of nobility weighs heavily on Wendelin. He still dreams of living as an adventurer, free to explore and take on quests without the political entanglements of aristocratic life. His brother Erich attempts to provide perspective during a brief meeting. He notes that while the Baumeister family serves as vassals to the Duke of Bleichrieder, Wendelin's situation has fundamentally changed. He's no longer an ordinary knight but a baronet who has accomplished a great feat. He doesn't need to concern himself with the duchy's affairs in the same way lesser nobles would. Erich congratulates his younger brother on the achievement, but Wendelin finds little joy in the honor. Being a noble feels like an enormous inconvenience rather than a privilege. Aruterio notices Wendelin's melancholy and chides him for sighing, warning that happiness will escape if he continues looking so gloomy. Then Aruterio produces something that transforms Wendelin's mood entirely, the item from the capital guidebook that Wendelin has long desired. Aruterio had to hunt it down through his trading connections, eventually acquiring it from a merchant who obtained it from Mizuho in the north. The gesture of friendship and thoughtfulness cuts through Wendelin's frustration with his new noble status. The kindness prompts Wendelin to reflect on a lesson from his previous life as an office worker. His former boss once asked him about the difference between fermentation and rot. The correct answer was that they're fundamentally the same process, decomposition by microorganisms, but people call it fermentation when it benefits them and rot when it causes harm. The distinction lies not in the process itself, but in whether humans find it useful. Perhaps nobility works the same way. The responsibilities, the restrictions, the political maneuvering, all of it could be viewed as either a burden or an opportunity depending on how he chooses to use his position. With this realization, Wendelin begins to accept that maybe being a noble doesn't have to mean abandoning his dreams. Perhaps he can find a way to make his new status serve his goals rather than constrain them, turning what feels like rot into something more like fermentation, uncomfortable but ultimately productive. The episode opens with Wendelin completing a true baptism ceremony at the church, a sacred ritual typically reserved only for chosen individuals of high standing. Cardinal Hohenheim, one of the most powerful figures in the religious hierarchy, personally conducts the ceremony and invites the young baronet to share tea afterward. Wendelin expresses profound gratitude for the honor and presents an offering to the cardinal, demonstrating careful understanding of proper protocol and the church's influence. Hohenheim accepts graciously and calls for his granddaughter to join them. A young woman named Elise Katharina von Hohenheim enters and introduces herself. Wendelin immediately senses something extraordinary about her. She possesses magical power, specifically the rare ability to use holy healing magic. While Wendelin can only manage purification spells, Elise's healing abilities make her invaluable to the church's charitable work treating the wounded and sick. The people call her Saint Hohenheim for her compassionate service. The conversation takes an unexpected turn when Wendelin casually comments on Elise's beauty and suggests he should join the competition for her hand in marriage. What begins as seemingly light banter suddenly becomes deadly serious. Cardinal Hohenheim immediately seizes on the suggestion, proposing that Wendelin take Elise as his wife. Both are underage. Wendelin and Elise are only 12 years old, so it would be an engagement with the actual wedding occurring once they reach adulthood in 3 years. Before Wendelin can fully process what's happening, the cardinal declares the matter settled. Within 1 minute of meeting Elise, Wendelin finds himself engaged. He thought they were simply having a business discussion, but Cardinal Hohenheim orchestrated the entire encounter with calculated precision. The cardinal later reveals to his assistant Sebastian that with the king's backing, even the duke cannot object to this arrangement. The offering Wendelin presented was extraordinarily valuable, demonstrating the young man's understanding of the church's power. Cardinal Hohenheim has strict standards. His granddaughter must marry someone of at least baron rank, and Wendelin's accomplishments, combined with his political acumen and magical ability, make him the perfect match. Wendelin's friends react with shock when he returns from the baptism engaged. Erwin cannot believe such a thing happened so quickly, while Anna and Louise note that he's engaged to the famous Saint Hohenheim herself, a woman of excellent lineage and reputation. Wendelin protests that 1 minute isn't enough time to determine a life partner, but his companions explain the reality of noble marriages. Such unions exist to solidify family ties and political alliances. Personal feelings matter less than strategic advantage. Anna admits she's prepared for the same fate eventually. Louise points out that Wendelin himself said Elise was beautiful, and when he admits he thought she had a good personality too, they ask why he seems troubled. Gwendolyn reveals that when he asked Elise to show him around the capital, she refused. The rejection stings, suggesting their engagement might be purely political rather than based on any genuine connection. However, when Elise learns through her grandfather that Gwendolyn interpreted her refusal as coldness, she immediately seeks to correct the misunderstanding. She apologizes for her inappropriate behavior and insists on personally showing him around the capital. Her earnest explanation reveals that she wasn't being honest before. She genuinely wants to spend time with him and have fun together, not merely fulfill a duty. The sincerity in her words begins to bridge the gap between arranged marriage and genuine affection. Gwendolyn cautiously accepts her offer, though he remains uncertain about her true feelings beneath the polite facade she maintains in front of her grandfather. The planned outing to explore the capital runs into immediate complications. Gwendolyn attempts a disguise to avoid the constant harassment from people seeking to become his retainers or marry into his family. The disguise fails spectacularly when Rodrich, the persistent spear wielder who keeps begging for employment, recognizes Gwendolyn instantly despite his comical outfit. Rodrich's loud announcement draws a crowd of hopefuls who swarm Gwendolyn, making the peaceful shopping trip impossible. Erwin feels sympathy for his friend, nodding that summer break should be a time for sightseeing and relaxation, not constant harassment. Gwendolyn's brother Erich suggests the obvious solution: hire a retainer who can handle the job of turning away all the other applicants. The problem with this practical advice becomes apparent when Erwin explains that Gwendolyn cannot officially hire retainers without possessing a proper fief. Erich realizes his mistake, but then Erwin makes a stunning announcement. He's always been one of those hopping to be hired, and now he considers himself Gwendolyn's first retainer. The declaration confuses everyone as the fief problem hasn't been resolved. Gwendolyn clarifies his peculiar situation. He does have a fief, technically. The king granted him the title Baronet of the Undeveloped Land, meaning his domain consists of a massive plot of wilderness without a single building, road, or settlement. He possesses land but lacks the funds to develop it into anything functional. Erwin's enthusiasm evaporates instantly upon learning this, and he immediately tries to quit as retainer. The comedic speed of his hearing and resignation leaves Ina and Louise stunned at his shamelessness. Despite the complications, Gwendolyn finally manages to meet Elise for their arranged tour of the capital. She arrives at the Adventurers Academy, impressed by its reputation, and excited to spend time with the famous dragon slayer whose heroics are known throughout the capital. Elise expresses happiness that she'll become the wife of such an accomplished man. Her genuine warmth begins to ease Gwendolyn's concerns about their arranged engagement. Meanwhile, Louise and Ina discuss Erwin's successful employment as Gwendolyn's retainer and realize they've missed their opportunity by being out shopping for fancy clothes. Louise hatches a plan: they should also ask to become retainers. Erwin, now enjoying his position of seniority, agrees to put in a good word for them, smugly nodding that he's always wanted juniors. This declaration infuriates Louise and Ina, who refuse to be treated as subordinates. They realize their pride prevents them from directly asking Gwendolyn for employment. Louise reveals her deeper motivation to Ina during a private conversation. If she could become Gwendolyn's concubine rather than just a retainer, she might one day open a school to teach her family's martial arts style. Such an accomplishment would finally earn her family's recognition, something that has eluded her as a third daughter. Ina apologizes for not understanding Louise's situation and promises to support her friend's efforts. Louise enthusiastically designs special outfits for their attempt to catch Gwendolyn's attention. She creates an extremely revealing costume for Ina, who immediately refuses to wear something that's essentially just strings. Louise insists it covers what matters, but Ina argues it reveals nearly everything. After much argument, they settle on a more modest but still flattering alternative. The evening continues with Gwendolyn and Elise's date through the capital. Gwendolyn finds himself powerfully attracted to Elise's beauty, but struggles with guilt over these feelings. He's engaged to her, committed to settling down, yet questions whether such thoughts are appropriate. He reminds himself that he's not particularly brave when it comes to matters of the heart. Attempting to focus on safer topics, he asks about her life being called a saint since childhood. Elise denies that the title came that early, and Gwendolyn expresses sympathy for how difficult such expectations must have been. To lighten the mood, he suggests testing the magical ring they purchased earlier, one that glows when magic flows through it. When Elise channels her power into the ring, it shines with brilliant intensity, far brighter than when Gwendolyn tried it. He marvels at her enormous magical capacity, declaring he was right to ask her to marry him. Then he corrects himself: not right but lucky. Elise responds that she's the lucky one, or rather she's honored. The genuine emotion in their exchange suggests that what began as a calculated political arrangement might blossom into something deeper. As they share this moment of connection, Gwendolyn realizes he'll need to stop thinking like a salaryman from his previous life, and fully embrace his new identity as a noble and future husband in this fantasy world. Nears its end, and Louise and Iana discuss their plans regarding Wendelin. Their original scheme to become his concubines has been postponed. They're already party members at the academy, so there's no rush. They'll resume their efforts after returning to Brightburg. Meanwhile, an unexpected visitor arrives at Wendelin's temporary residence. Elise, his fiancée from the capital, comes seeking him, only to learn he's been summoned to the royal castle. She settles for speaking with his companions instead, asking them what kind of man her betrothed truly is. She wants to understand the person she's pledged to marry. At the castle, the king presents Wendelin with a monumental task: slay an ancient dragon. The request comes with the weight of royal authority, and Wendelin immediately accepts without hesitation, his corporate slave mentality from his previous life ensuring he cannot refuse a superior's command. Royal advisor Warren explains the strategic importance of the mission. Halkenya Prairie possesses vast agricultural potential that could resolve the capital's food shortages, but the region remains undevelopable because it serves as the territory of an ancient dragon named Gregorland. Only mages can withstand a dragon's breath, making Wendelin and Brantag essential to the campaign. The king promises reinforcements, and Master Swordsman Armstrong is introduced as the leader of the king's Order of Knights. Warren announces that both Armstrong and Wendelin will serve as commanders of the dragon-slaying army, with Wendelin specifically appointed as commander-in-chief of the special force responsible for planning the operation. The appointment overwhelms Wendelin. Being made commander-in-chief carries enormous pressure, especially for someone with no military experience or strategic knowledge. The situation becomes even more complicated when Warren announces that Elise will also participate in the campaign as an apprentice, none capable of using holy magic to support the troops. Wendelin protests that both he and Elise are still underage, and surely the capital has many experienced young magicians better suited for combat. Warren dismisses these concerns, explaining that Wendelin's family requested the palace teach him what it means to be a nobleman in the capital. This campaign serves as that education. Back at the temporary quarters, Erich explains the political maneuvering behind these decisions to Wendelin's concerned friends. The palace moved quickly after Wendelin's defeat of the undead ancient dragon, recognizing an opportunity to establish him as the head of a new noble line. By granting him territory and arranging his marriage to the saint, they've set everything up for him to produce an heir and legitimize his new house. But the arrangement serves multiple purposes beyond Wendelin's benefit. The original Baumeister knightdom remains impoverished with only 10 knight retainers and constant financial troubles. Yet they're vassals of the powerful Duke of Bleichruder. The palace wants the Baumeister family to present a more respectable face to the world. By establishing Wendelin as the head of an independent baronet house in the capital, they create two completely different noble families. One remains a poor vassal in the countryside, while the other operates as a capital noble who can maintain his adventurer license. It's the best possible outcome for Wendelin, even if it comes wrapped in obligation. The dragon-slaying campaign itself proves relatively straightforward. Armstrong's magic armor converts magical power into physical protection, allowing him to support the assault while keeping blood from splattering. Wendelin and Brantag execute a frontal assault, with Wendelin's fire lance dealing massive damage. The dragon falls, and Wendelin quickly collects its valuable remains in his magic bag. Armstrong notes they won't receive official rewards for this mission. It's considered their obligation as nobles, but the dragon's body parts will sell for far more than any monetary reward anyway. The real challenge, however, has only just begun. Armstrong warns Wendelin to brace his spirit and muscles for what comes next. Wendelin assumes the worst is over, with only weaker enemies remaining, but Brantag delivers a sobering lesson about monster extermination. He asks what killed Wendelin's master Alfred 15 years ago. The answer wasn't a single powerful creature, it was overwhelming numbers. That same threat now faces them as monsters, no longer kept in check by the dragon's presence, begin multiplying rapidly across Halkenya Prairie. The garrison forces and Wendelin's temporary army must exterminate them before they become an uncontrollable plague. The extermination campaign stretches across 4 brutal days. Louise and Ian are near exhaustion, their stamina depleted from constant combat. Erwin claims he can continue, but even his endurance shows signs of strain. Wendelin's mana reserves run dangerously low despite attempting to use the least amount of magic possible for each spell. Erich scolds him for trying to play the hero, explaining that Wendelin's stoic performance only increases the army's anxiety. The soldiers need to see their commander being human, not an untiring demigod. Erich advises Wendelin to simply be himself. Despite this advice, the soldiers perceive Wendelin as a born hero whose mere presence bolsters their spirits. The Dragon Slayer's unwavering determination inspires them to push beyond their limits. Elise observes Wendellin's performance with growing understanding. She realizes he's pretending to be their hero, maintaining a facade of strength even when exhausted. If he can sustain that act for the army's sake, then she must do the same. She throws herself into healing the wounded with relentless dedication, working far harder than necessary. Other priests express concern about her pace, but Elise insists on continuing. If Wendelin will be their hero, then she must be the saint they need. Her beauty, kindness, and tireless healing efforts make her the perfect complement to Wendellin's heroic image. The episode opens with news of another Baumeister brother marrying into a knightdom. Helmut's marriage, like those of Erich and Paul before him, stems primarily from families seeking connections to Wendellin's rising influence. Paul bluntly acknowledges this reality, noting that Wendelin draws the entire nation's attention and must accept his prominence. He also reminds Wendelin about an important obligation: the kingdom's martial arts tournament held once every 3 years. All nobles must participate at least once, making it an unavoidable duty for someone of Wendellin's status. When Wendelin assumes he'll enter a mage division, his brothers deliver disappointing news. No such category exists. The tournament only features swordsmanship, spearmanship, archery, and hand-to-hand combat. Nobles must demonstrate splendid swordplay to earn proper respect, so Wendelin will enter the swordsmanship division despite his weakness in that discipline. His plan to enhance his body with magic faces immediate rejection. Magic use is forbidden in what's meant to be a pure test of skill. Wendelin glumly wishes there were a kitchen knife division instead. Training begins in earnest at the capital's Adventurers Academy, which boasts far superior facilities compared to the Breitberg branch. Louise and Iana push Erwin hard during sparring sessions, refusing to let him give up despite his exhaustion. Wendelin observes that their summer break training proved worthwhile, though Louise counters that he was the first to tire. The group discusses their plans. They're not actually pursuing adventurer careers long-term, but rather training to become Wendellin's retainers. Louise declares her ambition to become the best adventurer regardless, while Iana notes they'll train through summer break, return for their second year at the Capital Academy, and then transition to retainer roles. The arrangement satisfies their family's wishes while allowing them to develop useful skills. Iana plans to study accounting during her time home, recognizing it will prove valuable when Wendellin's territory opens for business. Louise decides she'll specialize in protecting Wendelin through swordsmanship, prompting Iana to scold her for arbitrarily choosing her role. Brantag arrives and delivers sobering advice about party dynamics. With 2 years remaining until they turn 15 and become official adults and adventurers, he warns that it's natural to let go of members who can't pull their weight. Party members are comrades who entrust each other with their lives to achieve goals. Feelings alone won't sustain such relationships. Brantag admits he swapped out party members several times during his own adventuring days. Erwin protests that Wendelin would never abandon them, but Brantag simply advises him to ensure he's never seen as a hindrance. The harsh reality shakes Erwin's confidence in their bond. The tournament preparations intensify as the event approaches. Louise declares her intention to win her division, training relentlessly alongside Iana. Erwin pushes himself to extraordinary limits, completing 99 push-ups and shouting victory with each repetition. His dedication impresses even Louise and Iana, who admit he might actually win despite his annoying habit of constantly yelling. Wendelin, meanwhile, struggles with basic training. After a month of preparation, he remains painfully aware that he'll likely be eliminated in the first round. Louise encourages him to do his best anyway, and both she and Iana promise to cheer him on. Wendelin apologizes to his late master Alfred's memory, knowing he won't achieve victory. Beneath the surface of tournament preparations, personal insecurities emerge. Elise comments on Wendelin's physical stamina as he forces himself through exhausting training sessions. She confesses her own fear of becoming a burden, explaining that as a nun she cannot afford weakness and has been desperately trying to keep up with everyone else. Wendelin reveals he's noticed her secret early morning training sessions, which she conducts alone to avoid worrying others. The conversation highlights how even those who appear perfect struggle with hidden doubts. Erwin interrupts to announce his determination to win the tournament, asking Wendelin to watch his victory. The day of the tournament arrives with mixed results for Wendelin's party. Brantag and Armstrong secure excellent seats, though those seats will only be used for the finals. They must first pray everyone survives the preliminaries. Elise brings homemade lunch boxes for everyone, earning grateful thanks from Iana and Louise. As the preliminaries approach, Iana discovers Wendelin sleeping, exhausted from focusing too intensely